Hey there. I was just typing up one of the summary passages of Hebrews, finishing it up, almost done. And I got to a point where I said we need a breakthrough to realize that the word of faith, the gospel, is Christ himself. And you know that one of my biggest things that I talk about on this channel is learning to preach the gospel to yourself as a means to bring yourself into the Spirit and to walk in the Spirit, to live in the Spirit, and enjoy the Spirit. And I looked up the supporting verse for that. Romans 10, 7, 8, and 9. We're very familiar with verse 9, which says, if you believe it in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, you will be saved. But the preceding verses are just as powerful. We just haven't paid that much attention to it, I guess. But it says, and you'll have to forgive me, I'm kind of paraphrasing here. It says, faith doesn't say, who shall bring bring Christ down from heaven? Who shall ascend to heaven to bring Christ down? Nor does it say, who shall descend to bring him up? But the word of faith, which we preach, is in your heart and in your mouth. And that is a butcher. You should check it out. What is he saying? The word of faith is the reality of Christ being present with you. You tend to think that Christ is in the heaven and you got to go get him. And that's really what religious works come out of, this idea that Christ is somewhere else and I've got to get to him. Whether it's go to the temple or go to institutional church or maybe when I go to heaven. But the word of faith brings Christ to you because the word is Christ himself. And we know that to be true, but how often do we actually exercise our faith in the word of faith to bring the reality of what our faith substantiates to us in our experience? The word of faith movement is a counterfeit of the real thing. The real thing, there is power in the tongue. There is life and death is in the power of the tongue, right? And that we are not warlocks shaping our reality by speaking things and using quantum physics to alter the nature of the universe and make things happen. No. The word of faith is Christ himself, who supplies himself as the Spirit through the hearing of faith, so that you can put on Christ and put on Jesus, clothe yourself with a consciousness of who he is and what he's done for you. And it can become so tangible and enjoyable to you that you're just in a different realm called the gospel. And Paul talked about that in Romans, the first chapter. He said, God is my witness, who I serve with my spirit in the gospel. He serves with his spirit in the gospel. The gospel is a realm of truths, propositional truths concerning who Christ is. But later you find out that this is the word of faith, and this realm is not just a set of things that we believe. It is a person who is manifesting himself to us through the truth. The way he speaks to us is to shine upon us through truth, and the way and when he shines upon us, he imparts his life to us, because in him was life, and the life was the light of man. When the light shines, there's life coming to you, and that life is the Spirit of reality, who is Christ himself, the embodiment of the triune God, in whom all the fullness of the Godhead dwells bodily. coming to you and tabernacling over you and springing up from within you as the fountain of living water, and even flowing out as rivers of living water to refresh you and others. That's the purpose of the word of faith, that you would be satisfied with Christ and be brought to him, and he would be brought to you, that you wouldn't be thinking, oh, I got to go get him, but you'd realize he's right here now. How do I enjoy this? By preaching the gospel to myself, by coming under the hearing of faith, right? And that is what it says in Galatians 3. My favorite breakthrough verse is, did you receive the Spirit by the hearing of faith or by the works of the law? Does he who does miracle among you and supply you with the Spirit do so by the works of the law or by the hearing of the faith? Are you so foolish, having begun in the Spirit, are you now going to be perfected in the flesh? No, we're not going to be perfected in the flesh, nor are we going to go try to get Christ out of heaven. We have the word of faith, which we preach, which is in our heart and in our mouth, and he is so available, and he can be so tangible to you that you can be just caught up in another realm called the gospel, where he's so real to you that he satisfies your heart. And this is the lesson of the Christian life. Really, it all boils down to this: learning to reckon yourself dead, which means when I consider myself, I can't do anything. But then reckon on the reality. And how do I do that? By preaching the gospel to myself and bringing myself into a different realm. And I have to do this every day. We have to be renewed every day. This is our manna every day. Yesterday's manna won't give you the supply you need today to be in life and to be full of joy. That has to be put on every day. And so that's why, no matter how much you know about the Bible, and no matter how much you know about the gospel, really, yes, it saved you, but today it's not much use to you if you're not using it to put yourself on high with Christ in your experience and rejoice with joy unspeakable, full of glory. And that's what he wants, obviously. That's what he'd love to have, is for us to have a fellowship. And we have the weakness of the flesh, so we have intermittent fellowship. And, we get in it. None of us can sustain this. None of us are going to live in the Spirit 100% of the time. We're going to be always needed to be brought back. And that's why we have fellowship. That's why we have teaching. That's why we have encouragement. That's why we have evangelists. That's why we have each other. That's why we have prayer. Really, it's all about supplying to be brought into the reality and encouraged to learn to bring Christ into manifestation through the Word. That's really the main thing we need to be encouraged. And like I said, the word of faith is a counterfeit of that. It's not about calling money into existence. It's about speaking Christ. And he bears witness with his word. The Spirit bears witness to the word and to the blood. And when the Spirit bears witness, you have a witness in you that you're a son of God and you're a child of God and you are born of God and you are an overcomer. And greater is he that is in me than he's in the world, and all things are mine. And God, who gave me his only Son, how shall he also not give me freely all things? I don't have to worry. He provides everything. It takes out fear. It takes out anxiety. It takes out depression. It takes out everything. Now, is this a permanent fix? Like I said, no. You have to be renewed. It's while you're doing it that you can enjoy it. And then he tabernacles over you. And then, sure enough, after, this afternoon, you'll be back into your thing or whatever. But each time you do this, I will tell you this, he seals you a little more with himself. That every time you do this, renew yourself, he's writing himself into you and working himself into you a little more. So there's transformation that goes on, because we all, with unveiled face, beholding as in a glass the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into that same image from glory to glory. Transformation comes from glory to glory as we get glimpses of him, as we learn to enjoy the gospel, enjoy what's ours in Christ, and speak it into our mind, and realize he's so present with us. Maybe we will have a season. Maybe he'll bring us into a revival season where we just have an uninterrupted season of Christ, 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 Christ. I've had that before. I'd love to have that again. And I kind of do believe before we get out of here, we will see something like that. But this is the exercise of our faith, and this is how to live by faith. So just thought that was my meditation. Thought I'd speak it a little bit on the back of confessions about myself and my own, what I am in the flesh. Might as well confess what he is in the spirit. All right, take care.